Am I audible? Yeah? Good, good, good. So how many of you want to build the next Instagram? That seems to be the craze of the time, right? Every month something keeps changing. Next time it will be Pinterest or something like that. But I know this title is kind of catchy, but this is something we can do today with ASP.NET MVC. So before I start, I have a couple of questions. How many of you are MVC developers here? Okay, quite a few of you. Okay. Web developers? Most of you, right? And how many of you think that developing for the phone and the touch interface is also important? All of us, right? Because it's no longer just the browser. My name is Harish. I work as a developer evangelist, and I think you had an intro about me already. But this session is about how to build a site that can work on your browser, on the phone, without much of you doing the plumbing work. Even today, sites work on the phone, right? Many sites work on the phone. Like if you have a smartphone, many of the sites today work without any problems at all. Probably 5 or say 7 years back, if you have a site, you need to have a WML version of the site. Have you seen that? You have a WML version or an XHTML version which runs on a Nokia high-end phone. So you have to have different versions of the site running there. Even today, it's actually good to have a different version of pages for your site that renders specifically for the mobile. Do you agree? Because it's a very small form factor. But the gap is reducing considerably. With MVC, you can start building apps which just work fine on the web and on the phone as well. And also with jQuery mobile integration with MVC, we are trying to make it work seamlessly on the touch devices also. I'm sure most of us have a touch device at home, some form of device. Galaxy Tab, iPad, Windows Lite is coming out shortly. So there's going to be definitely touch with all of us very soon. So if you are building a website, you may as well want to make it work on this there. But two things I want to clarify. One is that when you say building an app, this can be called an app because it's a web application. But you know the difference between an installed app and a web application, right? An installed app is that one that runs on the device, a pre-install, right? So if you're building a website, it typically is a web application that you use on the browser, but you can also do a lot of workaround today to make that web application work like a desktop application. Do you know how it is? How do you make a web application behave like a desktop application? Awesome, local storage. And there are much more things like PhoneGap, which make your application work nicely on the local hardware. HTML5 is a very good technology for that. But this is about MVC4. Most of you said you're working on MVC. There are a few things which are new in MVC, and we'll just see gradually as we develop the site. In fact, I want to show the site up front. I don't want to, if the internet is working, this is the site that I built up some time back. This is not a very comprehensive site or anything like that, whenever it loads. This is a site we want to build today on the an MVC4. Right, so if you see, there's no internet, I think. Okay, there is one internet here. Okay. So by the way, I'm on Windows 8, so you see all this. How many of you came to the Windows 8 stall? Okay, great. It seems to have a limited connection. Let's just go and connect with the event LAN. Maybe it's much faster. Yeah, okay, it's connected at least. And let's give it a try. Once it loads. All right, so improved templates. So there are some, so all of you know, how many of you is Visual Studio here? Okay, quite a few of you, right? So Visual Studio's strength is actually on the template side. Like you can create a file, new project, web application, mobile application, etc. There are a lot of enhancements to the templates. And most of us, how many of you think performance is very important for your application? Including me. And how many of you think about it once you deploy your application? Quite a few of you, right? Everything works nicely well on your desktop machine. It works in your machine, everything fine. When you go to the production, that's when you think, oh my God, I have to talk about performance. And then the fight starts. You should have had an architect who does the performance analysis first. Fight goes on. But performance enhancements are done in MVC4. We didn't really want to just keep introducing new features in MVC. We wanted to ensure that existing features work nicely with much better performance. That's what is bundling and minification. We'll see the sample of that there. We also thought that it's becoming more and more viable to make your controllers. I'm sure all of you know about controllers. Model view controller. If you're not aware of, a controller is one that exposes all the HTML that is required to you from the class file, and then the view file just gets the content and then renders it there on the page there. This is very different from the way ASP.NET Web Forms work. Web Forms has a page and a code behind model. In MVC, the view doesn't really understand or know what's going to come for it from outside. It just renders what's sent to it as a HTML, that's all. And the controller sends the code from the class file, and the controller also in turn interacts with the model to get the data from the database. That's the way an MVC model works. So, but we increasingly see that a lot of people want to build this controller as a service because it's much easier to consume a service using JavaScript. Do you agree? If you want to consume something from the code behind from JavaScript, it becomes very difficult if it's actually a simple class file. If it is a service, it becomes much easier because you can actually use JSON to consume the service, right? So Web API is direction towards that. How do you build HTTP services using ASP.NET MVC? Mobile web, how do you render the same site on a mobile web? Async support, how many of you are async programmers here? Okay, few of you, right? Async has been there for some time now. It's not new in MVC4. Async has been there since MVC2 days. But async completed event is not required in MVC4. You can see that you can return a task parallel library from the controller using async. How do you bind it for mobile devices? And there are two more things which I will talk at the end of the session there. So I'm hoping the internet is now connected. Yeah, it's connected. So this is the site I talked about. In fact, you can go and check the site on the phone also. Currently, you can just go and browse this there. Lot of things you can buy. How many of you use? How many of you read this book? Immortals of Meluha. Okay. How many of you use Canon 550D? There will be a lot of people, no? Okay. How many of you use Lumia 800 here? Okay. iPad. How many of you use computers here? Okay. I'm trying to get a response. Okay. Good. So this is the site I talked about there, but let's try building this now. So to begin with, I am going to use Visual Studio 2011 Beta. This is available for download now. You can download it for free. It runs on Windows 7, Windows Vista, and Windows 8 as well. So that's what I'm going to use here, and this is the beta that I want to run. So this is the new VS11 Ultimate Edition Beta. It's a free download that you can use there. It has a lot of advantages. It allows you to target the newest version of .NET Framework, which includes MVC4 as well. Right, so let's say we want to start building our site. So file, new project, and this template is MVC4 application template. So let's give this a nice name. My mobile web touch app. Okay. And you see a lot of templates there. There is an empty template and there is an internet application template. If you have worked with MVC3 earlier, you know this dialog. This gives you different options there. If you're using an empty template, it means that you are doing all the content yourself. You want to create the controllers yourself, etc. If you're using an internet application, it will give you the scaffolding structure. Controller, view, model, files will be created, default values will be created for you. Then you can start working on that. And that would use a forms-based authentication for your authentication mechanism. If it's an intranet application, it will configure it for Windows authentication. All of us know that, right? Intranet applications. And then there is this new 3 templates you see here: mobile application, web API, and single page application. If you target mobile application, this is specifically only for mobile devices or touch devices. If you are sure that your site is going to be only accessible across the mobile devices, then you can use this template. It will give you a different set of jQuery mobile templates for working on. And then web API is if you are building only a HTTP service. There is no MVC here, there is no UI layer here. You are just trying to build a service layer of HTTP using web API. That is a template for you. And there's a single page application template which allows you to create a very powerful application framework coming up from Microsoft, which is using your application in a single page interface. All interaction of your application is going to be on single page. We'll try and see if we can do it at the end, but that's the different templates here. So, but I want to choose internet application, and it's creating it now. So, you know, in MVC, when you create a new project, it will create all the folders, controllers, views, models. Additionally, it also does a lot of JavaScript writing there. You see a lot of increasingly script dependency on MVC. There's a lot of folders created here. In fact, if you notice here, there is a scripts folder which has a lot of ready-made scripts that you can use there, jQuery including. jQuery, Knockout, all those files are automatically added to you. You have a default controller that's created here, and you have the views that also are created here. No? Even if you don't do anything and just run this as it is, it gives you a nice starter template. Have you seen that? Yeah. It gives a nice starter template. This is based on HTML5 and CSS3. So we're moving more towards HTML5 and CSS3. All the styling that happens here is through CSS3, and you can see that it actually looks very nice. Even if you like for example, if you reduce the size of this, it automatically adjusts to render based on your form factor. Is that cool? Without you writing a single line of code, because it uses the CSS3 for media queries for doing this adjustment here. So that is the default template here. Not just that, it also comes with a few more additional things. In fact, it comes with things like authentication. So if you want to register your user, you can actually go ahead and see. You can see the dialog that comes there, Ajax-based dialog. You can select a username for yourself. and give it a password, and you can go and register here. So you can register for your site, you can do all those things. This data will go and sit in your SQL Express database, this username password, right? And then you can move it to SQL Server or any other database you want to do, right? It gives you the authentication code mechanism. What do you typically have? Registration, login, forget password. What else is there? Forget username, what else? Anything you want to do, it gives you all those options automatically. So you don't have to write the plumbing code for doing these operations. So I'm now logged in, as you can see. It says hello Rangan H, right? So it's done that for me automatically. So this has been there for some time now. It's not a very new feature, but the UI is a little new. For example, if you log off and see login, this login dialog is actually an Ajax-based, jQuery-based dialog. So all this is done for you automatically. So that is the part here. So let's go to some serious work here. So now we have, so if you are new to MVC, it works on this model. There is a model view controller, and inside the view, there is a shared folder, which is called the shared layout file. It's your, if you're an ASP guy, you know include files, right? If you're an ASP.NET Web Forms guy, you know master page. Similarly, in MVC, there is this layout file, which is kind of the structure of your site there. That is where you put all the common attributes. For example, in this case, you see this, my title, all those things are coming here, right in this page here, all right? So let's do one thing. Let's examine this. So first thing I want to do is I want to remove this and put a logo for us. And for that I need to have some images. So I'm going to copy some images for my application. So here I want to copy a few images to my folder. Right. One more cool thing in MVC in Visual Studio 2011 is that VS11 is that you can also see a preview of all the pictures right here. Nice. You can see what picture is this right from here, so you don't have to really open the picture. If you open the picture in VS, it will actually open a gradient view and all those things, right? You don't have to do that. You can just quickly see a preview of that from the picture here. So I copied the images there. I also want to copy some CSS styles. I don't think working on CSS is a great thing on stage, so I just did that automatically. So I can just copy this CSS files here, and yes, I'm going to replace. And finally, I want to copy just one script which I have written for this site. So with that, we are kind of done with the initial part. Okay. So now, as I add script here, so what do you typically do to include a script in a page? You put a script source equal to script file and then the value of that, right? So in ASP.NET world, you typically do a drag and drop of the script file. It will automatically add the entry for you. So let's say, let's remove all this link and all those things, the optimization part here. In fact, let's remove this optimization stuff here from this page. Let's keep it on the notepad. So I don't have notepad, so let's leave it as it is. So now if you have to include a script file, how do you do typically? If you have at least 10 script files required on your solution, you can just go to the Solution Explorer here and drag and drop all the script files. Right? You can just click on this, select all of this, and go to Layout. And you probably can just drag and drop all the script files here. That's what you do, right? Probably not all the files. Whatever files you require, you just drag and drop it here. Are you with me so far? You have to include all the script files required there. So one good thing that you will notice is that this // is not a great structure because in MVC it's a resolving pattern. So you have to replace this with a tilde hash symbol. So you got to replace all of this with a, in fact I made a mess here, so let me not do that. With a tilde hash symbol, so replace all of this with a tilde hash symbol, right? So now I made it work on this thing there. One thing that you'll notice new here is that if you are doing this in MVC3, you have to put a url.content@ because it will not understand what is a tilde symbol. In MVC4, you can simply do tilde/. Tilde means you go to the root, you know that, right? Tilde is root. So it goes to the right part there. So let's run this now. Ignore the part. And this is the F12 developer toolbar. How many of you use this? Okay, a few of you. If you are not, it's there right from IE8 days. IE8 is having this, IE9 has it by default, IE10 has a much improved toolbar here. So when you go to the network toolbar here and click on start capturing and run this page, just notice what's happening here. Just ignore this script error. You see that there is a lot of this script file requests that happen in the page here, right? Let me probably increase this size, zoom it to 200%. Yeah. And you see that there's a lot of the script requests that happen there. All of them are GET requests that happen for all the script files there, right? Notice this there. So this is basically what happens when you do a regular script adding to your solution today. Forget about MVC. Even if you do it in normal web forms, this is what happens there. It makes a request a script file every time there. But MVC4 has this wonderful feature called as bundling and minification. With it, what you can typically do is that you can remove all these references here. All the script reference you can remove here. And simply say, I want to just include all the JS files which are inside the script folder. Right? Forget about all the file extension and all, name and all. Just say I want to include all these script files here. Now run this. Now run this and hit the F12 toolbar and start capturing the request and run this now. Now there is only one request. Are you able to see that? Yeah.
How does this vary from using Yahoo compressed tools or Google Story Compiler when I'm defining the files?
How does it? So what is it? What is the question?
So there are two tools in the market. One is through Yahoo where I can compress the files.
Okay.
Both JS and CSS.
Yeah.
Google tools also.
Yeah.
So how does this differ from that, or and that thing you're using the same?
There is one big difference you will see in a second, but here this one does same thing. It does compression of the files. Basically, it just compresses the file. If you go to the view here, if you go to the detailed view and go to the response body here, you see the JavaScript files here. All of them are actually compressed. It's minified with all the spaces removed there. That's very similar. It does out of the box. You don't have to include a third-party library for this, right? So this is done there for you automatically. Now, one important thing that you would like is that not just this, but if you are doing, say, let's do this, let's remove all this, and let's go back to the default one, which was earlier. So this one has one additional thing, which is system.web.optimization.blah blah, all this stuff there. We are removing this full namespace on the release version. We just have simply helper.bundle. But when you do this system.web.optimization.bundle table.resolve URL, it does one more additional thing that you would want to notice, which is when you run this page now, hit the F12 toolbar and start capturing the request and run this now, it still gets only the one script file, but you also notice that it's doing one more thing, which is adding a GUID ID to this, right? Are you able to see that? Just one junk value that comes there here. That is basically caching your script on the client side. You may ask, it's already there. All browsers do it currently, right? But this also generates a server-side cache for your script. So which means that it's compressing your script files, removing all the white space, etc., and creates a server-side cache. So when you access this again, it does not go to the server at all for at least an year. It gives a cache busting token for an year, which means your script is being cached locally. So if you notice here, if I go to any of the other pages, this request is a 200 request, but when I go to about page or when I go to contact page, you see the request is actually a 304, which means it's coming from your local cache, right? It will not download the script at all from the server, because that's the time you spend a lot of time on the internet. If you go to any site today, just think about Facebook or any site and open F12 toolbar and hit the start capturing, you notice that the scripts take a lot of time to load, correct? They'll take one script to load from here, one from there, one from here. It will take a lot of time to load the pages there. But this one is going to load all the scripts from your local cache for 1 year. The question that comes is, what happens if the script is changing, right? What if I change the script there? And what is the answer for them? You have to wait for 1 year, no? Isn't it logical? Yeah? No? It's not, right? So that has a cache busting token also on the server side, which means that there is a file notification that happens there if you change the file. So when the file is changed, it will just invalidate this cache and send a new downstream file there. Got it? So that part is done automatically for you. There is a script being cached locally, and also there is an ID that's given to that. It's kind of an identifier for the script file. And when the script file is being modified by you on the server side, and then you load the page again, this ID will go off, and there's a new ID that comes there because it is now an invalid cache. So there is cache invalidation that happens there automatically for you on the server side. So that's something that's coming up. It's called bundling and minification. So it does three things now. One is that it bundles all the files together, so you don't have to really include each and every script file separately. It also does minification, which means it will remove all the white spaces in your script file and make it very, very small. And thirdly, it also does a client-side browser caching of your scripts until the script gets changed or modified for a period of time, let's say 1 year. 1 year is the actual time frame that we use there for doing this thing there. So, so that is a bundling and minification feature that I want to talk about. And So that's the thing there. But we talked about the real application, right? How do you build this application? That's what is the real thing there. Yeah, go ahead, please.
The cache that you talked about, that's rather specific, right?
Rather what?
The cache that you talked about here,
Uh-huh.
is that browser specific, or if I go across the browser?
Across the browser, it is not browser specific there, because we are doing it on the server side, you're not doing it on the client side. The regular browser also caches it today. Even if you run any script today, it will cache it on the client side. But this is at the server side. We have a server side cache that runs there. 1 second, okay, I'm connected. That runs there, which will take care of this at the machine level. So you don't have to really make a request for a script, even if you're using it from Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Opera, right? So that is the thing there, but we saw the sample application that I created. This is the database that I have for this. If I want to see there is no diagram here, so let's just leave it there. The database is called JingleDB, and it has a few tables here, products, categories, suppliers, etc. It gives you a list of products there. That's what I'm going to use for my application there. So first things first, any application requires a model. Do you agree? Database model. Yeah? Is there any real world application without database? There will be some database there, no? NoSQL will be there at least, or Flatfile will be there at least. Some data store is going to be there. So we have a database that is running on SQL Server, but we want it to be a data model that comes there onto the side there. How many of you use Entity Framework here? Okay, one of you. Entity Framework is from Microsoft. It's been there since .NET 3.5 Service Pack 1. It allows you to create a model for your database tables without you having to write the logic for that. How do you do that? You can just click on the models folder, add new model. You'll notice that this is something new in VS 2011. If you use something frequently, it will automatically show that in the used structure here. So you can see that add entity model is available as a template available there. So this one is going to generate from database. I'm assuming all of you have seen this wizard in the past. I'm going to quickly go through this wizard in the interest of time. So I'm going to connect to my local database called as JingleDB and click next. This is now reading your schema of database, and it gives you all the tables there. And I'm going to pick only 3 tables: categories, orders, and products. And I'm going to finish this wizard. This wizard takes your database table and generates classes for you. That's the classic OR model, right? Object relational mapping model. It takes your database table, creates a class for the tables there. So there is a category, there is a product, there is an order there. So 3 classes that are created there for you. This is the typical entity framework approach for creating an entity model there. But there is one caveat to this. It will create a lot of code for you automatically. If you open the model1.designer.cs file, it has actually generated a lot of code here. If you go and toggle all outlining, you just be surprised how much lines of code it has done for you automatically. Right? Too much of code. This is very useful if you are having a large database, because then you need to have something called as self-tracking entities across layers, etc. And there is a lot of tables, there is a lot of relationship that's maintained there. But for a simple database table like this, there is a lot of code. Do you agree? Lot of code there already in your page for this. Thankfully, Entity Framework came up with a new model called as Entity Framework Code First approach. Heard about it? Entity Framework Code First? Okay, great. EF Code First is taking your schema but then generating individual class files. The problem with this approach that's happening here is that it's creating one file, one EDMX designer file, which has all the class files and all the properties, all the attributes in one single file. And because of that, it's very hard to maintain the mapping. So there is again a mapping table inside the file there. So there's a lot of code because of that. With EF Code First, you can actually have individual files there. So how do you do that? You can simply right click here and say, if you have installed Entity Framework Code First template, you can simply say add code generation item. So this gives you this wizard which tells you what you want to do. And because I'm using Entity Framework 5 for this, I'm choosing this Entity Framework DB context generator. So that is the difference here. The regular Entity Framework creates something called as object context, right? Are you all with me so far? Object context is typically your central repository for all your context files in Entity Framework. If you're using Entity Framework, it means that you are actually taking a table and putting a class for that, right? And there are 10 tables in your database there. How do you maintain the context of all the tables? There's one single entry point called as object context, which maintains all the relationship there. Now, with Entity Framework Code First, there's something called as DB context, which is a simplified version of object context. This one, just see what happened to the code that we had earlier. When I go to the same designer.cs file, there is no code here now. All the code is now vanished. It took up all the code and put it into simple class files. You will notice that here in the Solution Explorer. If you see here, there is this category, there is product, and there is order. That's all. Simplified code, right? Interesting? So we did an entity model, add new entity model, and then we added Entity Framework Code Generation item. It gave me the EF Code First way of having your class files there. There is one small change I want to do here, because I'm going to use web API or HTTP services. I don't want to do a lazy loading of all these files. I'm going to remove that part here. I'm going to remove virtual keyword in all these classes. And with that, we're kind of done with the data model. So I'm going to remove this virtual keyword in all the classes here. So quickly doing that. So we have now entity model that is ready, right? The next thing that is important is the controller. So model is done now. You have to go to the controller part of it there. Controller has been, you already have a controller template right since MVC2 days. So I can go to controller here and say simply add controller and say I want to create a controller for my categories. Right? Categories is another table, right? So I want to, and I want to use an Ajax grid controller with read-write actions using entity framework. The model for this is going to be category, and the data context for this is going to be JingleDB entities, right? This is the way you add a controller to MVC3 or MVC2. Add controller, it will give you options. What do you want to do? Entity framework or non-entity framework, what do you want to do? I use entity framework in this case, so you created the controller. It did a lot of work for you automatically. It added the controller, it's still adding the controller, but it's taking a while to add the controller. So this is now adding the controller, and then once it adds the controller, we can just run this, do editing and all the stuff there. This is regular stuff about entity framework there. But what I talked about is the web API controller that allows you to expose this as a service. Let's just wait for a second here. So till this comes up, I just want to quickly show you how this runs in a application that I already built there. So when I go to here, categories, this is what happens when you create the controller. This gives you this kind of a grid approach, which you can go and do editing, deleting and all. It's an Ajax based approach. So you can edit this here, you can edit right from here, and then save this, you can do all these things there. So this is not really something that you can expose to the end users, because it's like a grid control, more of an admin kind of a interface there. But you can do this automatically using the add controller wizard. So I'm just hoping this is done by now. It's still going on, okay. Right, so let's quickly open this. Well, that loads, so that's the control that I added there. The next thing to do is the web API. Yeah, go ahead, please. It is connected to database, no? Sorry? Yes. It is connected to database. It will go to database, whatever you do. So, which is to do is busy for some time. Okay, great. So that part is done now. So next thing that you want to do is the add the web API controller. So this project already has this. I'll just show you how I did that, and then I'll come to that once it's ready. Add web API controller class. It creates this particular class file, which is called as products controller. So the difference is that the earlier controller that we create typically derives from the controller class. This one derives from the API controller class. What is the difference here? It exposes this as a service now. So you see that there is a return db.products there. In a normal controller that you see here, this one creates a view. It returns a view for your view files. This one returns just data. It does not return a view, because you want to consume this as a JSON data or a simple HTML data. You don't really know that. Web API controller exposes that as a data, so you can use that for your web, touch device, etc. Let's still see if it's up here. Maybe we'll close this and open. And reopen this. So what is the name we gave for this? Web, mobile and touch, right? So let's see what's happening here. So we had controllers here. Let's click here and add controller. And this one is going to be categories controller, which will use Ajax and all the stuff. Model is category, data context is going to be JingleDB entities, and click on add. It's taking a while, surprisingly, for some reason. So that's what is happening here. It's still busy, okay. And once we added that, we have the web API controller class there. So that's a simple class file. Only difference is that it does not return view, it returns to you data, right? Okay, so that's done. Where am I? Okay, here I am. Okay, categories controller is now ready. So we have the categories controller, which has the count, all the stuff that runs there here. Let's close the other one. Okay, it's still busy. Okay. This is now done, and I was talking about the web API controller, right? So I can just say add web API controller class and give this a name products controller. This one creates a simple end controller here. Here we want to write some logic here. So I want to say using my mobile web touch dot model. So I'm using the models for model of my application here. And then I want to create a reference for my entity framework. So it's going to be JingleDB entities, new JingleDB entities. What am I going to do? I'm going to return a collection of the products there. The one you see there, the pictures are all coming there. That's actually a collection. Photo is there, name is there, price is there, right? So that I'm going to return from the class file here. So when I come here, instead of the IEnable string that returns here, it's going to be an IEnable product type. And instead of a new string value, I'm going to return db.products.asQueryable .asQueryable collection, right? Web API has this get, push, put, post methods, simple OData structure, get, put, post, delete method operations there. You call them from a service here. So this is the web API controller class that I created now. So this is done. The next thing logically would be to create the view for this, right? If you add a controller like normal controller, add controller, that will automatically create the views for you. But in this case, we added a web API controller, and this one has created the facing some issues here. Let me just do one thing. Let me just go and kill this Visual Studio. Two instances running there parallelly. In task as well. All right. So that's what is happening there in this case there, right? Project templates, we saw entity framework code first, we saw default controller, we have the web API controller as well, views and rendering. So the normal view renders for your web browser. Even if you don't do anything, if you create a new project and run this on the page, it runs normally on the browser, and also if you resize it, you see that it runs on the device as well properly there. If you want to do much more advanced thing, then you have to look at certain options there. So for example, mobile view, right? Adaptive rendering is a part of MVC4 already, which means that even if you don't do anything, it will render nicely on your smaller form factors. But if you are looking at adaptive rendering as the main approach for your application, like if you are thinking that this application will be accessible on the touch devices or on the phone only, then you can choose display modes. Display modes allow you to switch between what you want to do. For example, if the request is coming from an iPhone, show this content. If the request comes from the Android device, show this thing. That one you can do using display mode switcher. The last thing is the extreme, which is only mobile template. You want to only create it for your mobile application. Then you have a separate template I showed to you that will create a mobile friendly view there. Let's see that as well. Okay, so this is still busy for some reason. Let's try if we can just go ahead and end this. So Visual Studio, a new instance, I'm creating it there. If you are only creating for the mobile, I'm just going to create this because till the time that comes up, I'll just show it to you. If you are only creating it for the mobile, then you could use this template, which is called mobile application template. This will create a jQuery mobile based interface for your application there. It will be the same structure like this. There will be a controller, there will be a model, there will be a view, but it will also add jQuery templates to your application here. So if you see this template and run this now, there is a different view of the same project structure you saw earlier, which is the touch friendly view. Are you able to see the difference here now? This runs nicely on an emulator. For example, if you are running this on a Windows Phone emulator, and once this loads, on a, let's say I want to browse the application here. Page up. On this phone emulator, I just want to say HTTP localhost : 36067. You can see that it looks nice on a touch device, right? Login, contact, all of this looks very nice on the touch device. Are you able to see that? The same template. Remember login, password, etc. That looks nicely on the touch device there. Not just on a Windows Phone emulator, but if you are running, say, where am I? Okay. Running, say, a simulator for iPhone, right? On this as well, this looks nicely. So which is http://localhost. What is the URL? This is the URL. We just copy this. And if you run this on, say, an iPhone simulator as well, it looks nice there as well, right? Or for that matter, if you want to use a touch device simulator, which is iPad simulator. Renders accordingly to the device there. So that is taken care automatically, but if you don't want to do this, if you want to have a regular app but also support mobile device, then there's a different approach that you can do. Let's try that as well. That's the kind of main demo I want to show. I'm going to create a regular application in this case, file new project, MVC4 application. It will be an internet application, which is like what we created earlier. And this one, when you run on the browser, it just renders like a normal web application. Just run this now. It runs normally, but you can also go ahead and install jQuery mobile. So you can just go to Tools and go to Library Package Manager. And here you can say, I want to install package jQuery.mobile.mvc. This will go to the internet and install the mobile template, and also does some additional tasks which I'll show it in a second. It's connecting to the internet now. If you see the views folder here and go to shared, that is this layout file that is there now. Just notice what happens to this folder once this is done. Okay, this is done now. It's resolving all the dependencies, successfully added this file, it's done that now. Now when you go to the folder here and go to the views, you see that in the shared there is also a layout.mobile.cshtml file. It created a mobile copy of your page there. So when you run this, it does this view switcher here. So when you see the view switcher code here, what it's doing is that if it is the context is coming from a mobile device, then do the desktop view, or if it's on the mobile device or in the normal view, do desktop view and do mobile view. Now when you run this on the phone, you see a difference here now. Run this application on the phone. What is the UI for this? Localhost 36154. When you go to the phone emulator here, and http localhost :36154. You see there are two different views now. There is a normal view and there is a desktop view. Desktop view is the regular view that you saw there earlier, but you can also use the normal view that you saw there. So it does the switching part for you automatically. So that's the view switcher part of it there. So even if you don't do anything, just install the jQuery mobile.mvc template. It will give you two different options to browse the site, which is using the normal view and the switching view. So let's see if this one is now ready, or I don't know if I have time. Okay, let's ditch this all. That's the rendering part of it there. So that's what you do typically. If you are looking at mobile only template, you can choose that template to do this activity. And just a second. Let's close all of this. And where am I? Okay, PPT is done. I'm just hoping this one is ready now. If not, I'll just close this. Let's give one last try, whether I can go and kill this. End task. Doesn't want to end the task. Yeah, it's now ended the task, thankfully. Okay, great. Let's try open this now. The same project we created first. Yep. Mobile web touch web app. It's now back to life. So we created this web API controller. We did all the activities that we did there. And when I go to the views here and go to home, we have the default index view which says that to learn more about MVC, blah, blah, all the stuff there. I want to remove all this junk values and remove this paragraph as well. And simply say, welcome to my store, something like that. And then I want to remove all the other default text there, which is sections, etc. So I don't want to have anything there. I just want to have a simple layout here. And we already created a web API controller. If you notice that in models we have the EF code first model that we already created there, and we have a controller which is the products controller that exposes the API, and one script file which I included in the beginning, if you didn't notice, is the get product.js file. What does this do? This is using knockout.js. It's taking a jQuery reference for jQuery reference of your API/products. You can see that $.get API/products, which means that you are accessing the service that you created from the jQuery. All of you know jQuery, right? You are actually accessing the service /API/products. And if you notice that I have not given the method name called as get, because when you simply say /API/products, it will automatically assume that you're doing a get operation of the service there. So /API/products is now the call that you are making to the service here. And then when you go to the index view, index doesn't have anything currently. I'm going to copy paste the views here. But before that, I want to include a bunch of scripts in this page. So you have 3 script files I want to include in the HTML view here. In the index page, instead of after the section, I want to include these 3 script files there. Basically the get products file, knockout file, and the CSS file for my solution there. The next part is I'm going to copy paste, and I'll tell you what I'm doing in a second. There's a lot of less time here now, and copy paste the script here. So what does it do here? This is using knockout template for binding it to a UI there. So you use a data bind template, and then you are using the product name as the value here. Product name comes from the controller, and then you also do the text of price, text of product name, and then also bind the image here. So that's what we're doing here currently. And then this is the knockout.js view model. It uses the view model approach for getting the collection into the products collection and then do the binding here. So let's run this and see what happens. Let me see if I made everything properly. Go to models. Yeah, I didn't remove the virtual keyword. If I use the virtual keyword, it won't be able to get it from the collection. That I've done. Order. This will not be able to do a lazy loading like you would do in normal C#. That's why it's not able to get the values. And category also, I want to remove the virtual keyword. Do a build of this and then run this now. It's not able to get all the values from my service here. Finally, so it's not able to get all the images there. It's actually using, so 3 things are used here. An API controller, which is a normal controller with a service, and then there is knockout.js, which is doing the binding part of it there, and there is one jQuery file which is taking the values from the controller there. So the interaction is a model, database model, and there is a code first model, and then there is a controller class which is a web API controller. There is jQuery that's calling the controller, and finally knockout is doing the binding of the UI. That's like 4 or 5 layers that's happening there, but you get this value here there. If you want to do further things, you want to do filtering of this value, I can do that as well, right? So if you want to do filtering of this value, I want all the values. Let me close all these files here, close all documents, and on the index.html, I don't want to have everything every time, so I want to add a filter here. So I've done that as well, simple ahref reference, and I'll explain what I'm doing in a second. Just want to add a, say you want to say, we suggest the following, and these are the categories there, right? And we need one more thing. We require now a get method which also accepts a parameter. So when I go to the controller file here, web API controller, that is there here, there is this products controller which has this method called as get, which just does a normal return. Instead of that, I want to have a return by category ID. So now this one is db.products.as variable where the category ID is ID. Simple stuff, right? Link. Are you able to see this? Simple stuff. Link. So it's a link query that I am calling here now. In fact, I have to do one small modification. Let's run this and see first. Now I have a filter here, so I can just filter based on camera, books, tablets. All this is happening on the client side. Interesting? So I'm just making call based on the client side. In fact, one small thing I have to do is that when I go to all categories, it will not know anything because I won't handle that part here. So I can just go here and say, if ID is 0, then just return everything. Else return based on category ID. Sorry about that. If ID is 0, then return everything, else return based on category ID. So now run this. Tablets, mobile phones, all categories. You get all the values here. Interesting? Same thing. Let's run this on a mobile device now. Emulator. What is the URL for this? Localhost 35962. That's the URL. It renders accordingly, right? You can see that values are now coming vertical. Click on books, tablets, etc. Interesting? Same code base. So you don't have to do it. If you are doing this jQuery.mobile.mvc addition through the console package manager, then it will give you two different views. It will give you a desktop view and a mobile view, like I showed you earlier. In case you want to do it, you can do that as well. For example, in the Visual Studio solution, I can say I want to have two different views because I don't really know if people will have smartphone. Then you can do the same thing I did earlier, which is tools, package manager, console, and say install package jQuery.mobile.mvc. The same application without you have to write code. This will install the mobile templates there. So what you will see here is that if you see the normal project structure here, the jQuery files that are there are normal jQuery files. Now in a second it adds all the jQuery mobile templates also. That's why it's able to do the rendering accordingly. So just wait for this to complete. Okay, it's done. Successfully installed jQuery, right? Okay, it successfully installed the jQuery templates now. Now when I run this on the same phone device, sorry about that. Just reopening the emulator for a second. How much time I have? Done? Okay, I'm done. Page up, localhost 35962. So it gives me the two different options now. I have a desktop view and a mobile view as well. So that's pretty much it I wanted to show. I'm happy to take questions. Yeah, before that, I'll just summarize once. So if there are two things I want to take back, right? In MVC4, there are two important things. One is that you can build controllers as a service. You don't have to really make controller as a class file. It will be a service, which means you can expose it to JavaScript clients, number one. Number two is that if you're building a default site using MVC4, it automatically does the rendering for different form factors nicely. But if you are targeting different ideas, like if you have a smartphone idea or if you're having a rendering for iPad, etc., then there are different templates to use if you want to start from the scratch there. And the third thing is that in MVC4, Entity Framework and jQuery and all of them work together nicely there. I didn't show the single page application template. I can show it to you outside if you want to see. That one uses one more template called as upshot.js, JavaScript file, JavaScript library, which uses the view model based on JavaScript. So if you're already using Knockout for the UI, we are using Upshot for the data model, and we are using Entity Framework for the data access layer. So it's like building complete structure of three-tier architecture there. Questions now?
So if I have one big existing page, which has a lot of tools and everything, so now I want to make it mobile or tablet. So what do you have to do?
Yeah, the question is, if I have an existing site that I have to optimize it for mobile, you cannot do that using the install package jQuery template there. You have to manually add jQuery mobile to the project and then do the rendering part of it there. There is some handhold work you have to do there. It's already existing, no? So if it's a project of MVC4, it will do the changing automatically. If it's an existing site that runs there, then you have to add jQuery mobile to your project and then do different page based on rendering there. The view switcher that you saw there, that works on normal applications also. It will switch your view based on the form factor that requesting it.
I can filter the data only for, say, if I'm displaying in a mobile, I only want some part of the page.
There are different views for that. There will be different views that you can create for this. In this case also there is an index.cshtml view and there is index.mobile.cshtml view. So there are two different files. Based on that you can do the rendering part of it there. Yeah? Yeah, please.
Here we are using jQuery for putting the data on rendering.
Correct.
How that will be rendered in JavaScript disabled browser? How that is handled?
On JavaScript, okay, that scenario is very niche these days. It was there earlier. 4 years back, if you asked me the question, there is a concern there. This one also uses unobtrusive JavaScript, which means the site will still render, but it will not do any functionality.
Putting the client side, that they will disable for some security reason. So how that can be handled?
I don't think that happens these days. This question was valid 4 or 5 years back. I don't think anybody disables client because most of the applications today use JavaScript heavily. If you disable JavaScript, then nothing is going to work there actually.
We still know if it's a website, they are not going to disable.
Huh.
For intranet side,
Huh.
for some security reason, some of our kinds of disability. So in that case, how?
Then you have to make a check based on script enabled and then do some server-side processing on this case. That's definitely a caveat, right? If JavaScript is not enabled, you can't use JavaScript, jQuery, knockout, upshot, you can't do any of these things there. That is a challenge currently.
Which are available in the PS11, that would work, right?
Which one, sorry?
The additional features, whatever you said, right? Putting the data from data model. You're putting the data from the data model using the Ajax code, right?
The Web API controller is a normal controller. It can also expose it to JavaScript, but it's a normal controller. You can also add a normal view and consume the data. That doesn't require JavaScript at all, basically. It only gives you additional options to use JavaScript there. We're using JavaScript because we want to make it faster on the client side. But if you don't have JavaScript enabled, you can do a normal view binding to a controller. It's a normal controller. You can use that as well. So,
AI controller provides the endpoints kind of thing. Like
yes, it decides the endpoint. If your request is based on JavaScript, it gives you a JSON endpoint. If you do a normal controller, it gives you all the XML endpoint. That's all.
Here we are using JavaScript for finding out the devices, right?
Correct.
So how that will handle non-JavaScript?
You're using jQuery and handling it there. If jQuery is disabled, you can't know what is the device that's being used there. You can probably say, sorry, if this is not supported in your application. Yeah, JavaScript totally disabled is a disaster scenario. Then you have to handle it separately. You can't really handle it at this point because most of the libraries and applications today rely heavily on JavaScript. And even if you see Windows 8 samples here, it heavily relies on JavaScript there today. Total JavaScript turn off is a very no-no scenario currently. But if it's happened, then you have to handle the code manually. There is nothing that Visual Studio can do for you. Yeah. Please, yeah.
the MEC installer, what you said, is it available for 2008?
2010 it's available. MVC 4 for 2010 is available currently, yes.
For 2008, we have to do manual jQuery mobile.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
This call, whatever calls we are doing, all are asynchronous. So, I mean, like Silverlight, can we, I mean, Silverlight also support only this asynchronous. So, can I make this synchronization call? Sometimes when we are developing some website, so there's some synchronization call is needed.
All this is actually having synchronous, it's not asynchronous at all. None of it's actually happening through JavaScript and it's happening through jQuery JavaScript. It is not asynchronous at all. Asynchronous, I didn't go to asynchronous part there. When you're making a call to a controller and marking it as an async controller, it's going to run this on a separate thread on the machine there. That is when really asynchronous is actually happening. This all happening on the client side is very fast, but it's not asynchronously happening. It's happening synchronously. One thread is running all this. In an asynchronous operation, there is going to be two threads. One thread which will work on the regular one. There's another thread which is freely available there that does all the operations there. This is not asynchronous at all. All right, thank you.